Howdy, my fellow people. Devstream 188 just happened, and there are some interesting changes that are going to be happening. So I figured, you know what, might as well go over them, because some of them are a little, controversial with the Valkyr rework and the slam changes. So there's a good chance that something I say is going to make somebody mad, but oh well, it is what it is. Now, right off the bat, this picture right here, oh man, amazing looking. We got Yareli Prime coming out. We got the next part of Warframe 99 with Rusalka here. And we have Valkyr with her Heirloom skin, which is, future me in editing, zoom in on this part right here. Yes, this part is of great interest to me. Anyways, let's go on. First of all, we have Oraxia, the spider frame, actually here. They even look, spider frame confirmed, finally, awesome. Oraxia looks absolutely incredible. Here, we're just gonna turn the sound off because we don't care enough about that right now, okay? We just want to see Oraxia in her all of her greatness. Here's where they first show her off. That's, I'm assuming, the alt helmet for her. Very interesting. And she's supposed to be also a boss that you can fight. And oh, look at that. Look at that. The spider frame is real amazing, I must say. I'm very eager to get my hands on Oraxia. Now, she won't be coming out yet, and we don't have all the details on her, so we'll have to see. But very, very interesting looking frame. Also, side tangent, I must say Reb and Meg look amazing here, especially this frilly outfit Meg is wearing is very fancy. Now, on from that, housekeeping, they do a lot of, like, you know, they're announcing TennoCon. Don't care much about that. But then Yareli Prime. Yareli Prime is coming with Compressor Prime and the long-awaited DieQ Prime. We, once again, don't have any stats for any of these, so not sure if they'll be just getting a stat bump or some sort of interesting gimmick with them. I'm hoping Compressor Prime just has crit. That's all it takes. Compressor is already really, really good. If they just give like crit stats to the Compressor, then it'll be funny big damage bubblegum. It'll be much better for damage other than priming, though it is pretty solid for both as it stands. I really like the design for Yareli Prime here. I do wish the helmet was a little less pronounced, smaller, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it'll look a little bit different in game. I actually haven't watched this teaser yet. It's 30 seconds long. Oh my goodness gracious. We skipped to an amazing part. That was very interesting. Look at that. Full on anime girl. Now, for Yareli Prime, they haven't announced any sort of changes with her, which is unfortunate. I'm not a huge fan of her current state in the game. She's still one of my favorite frames, but that's mostly because I just like her, you know, her theme. But I do think she needs some help in regards to her whole play style, I guess, because you really just slap on an augment Yareli, what is it, Royal Yareli, or Loyal Guard, Loyal Merulina, that's what it was, Loyal Merulina. See, I still play this game, I know words. And that completely takes away the K-Drive gimmick, and it fixes her issues, but it's mostly just because it gives a fuck ton of iframes. So you take up a mod space to take away half her identity to then just give her a bunch of iframes as a fix. And I don't really care for that. I think they need to go back and fix K-Drives first, and then that will retroactively fix how Merulina works when you're riding on her, or maybe give some more cool gimmicks to Yareli herself while riding Merulina. I do think her fourth could still use a bit of work. Even after all the buffs, it doesn't really feel like it's very useful. And I think that's most of the issues. I don't think there's too many issues with Yareli, but I do think she could use a bit of help, because I do like the theme of riding around on her K-Drive. DieQ Prime, not really sure. We already have a bunch of good bows. I guess we'll see if they do anything fancy with it. Oh, look at Merulina right here. The Merulina Prime looks pretty great. For the accessories, you get a very fancy Syandana. I really, really like that Syandana. And what is it? A drone, a domestic drone. Now, we're also getting the Kullvervo Apostate Deluxe skin, and this, oh my, oh me, oh my, this looks very, Very cool. Look at those. It's like red hot nails shoved into them instead of knives. It's glorious. And the chains hanging down. Very, very good looking skin. Very excited for that. Oh yeah, and Yareli Prime and the Kullvervo skin come out on May 21st in the interim cert update. Very fancy. We're also getting Isleweaver, which is the update for Reverse 1999, the rest of the story, or sorry, the next part of the story with Rusalka. Very interesting stuff. I'm not really going to go much in depth with that because I don't really bother with story stuff. That's not really my thing. I mean, I like the story, keep up with story, but it's not really a topic I cover. Instead, we have the almighty Cook for that instead. You should totally go look up Cook the Fanatic, absolute Giga Chad. Here's more Oraxia stuff. You know, they separated that down here. I guess I didn't need to try to look through it in the stream myself. They're doing a lot of new player experience and quality of life updates with the Vor rework. Sounds very interesting. Very, very interesting. Lots of, like, you know, UI and stuff. So I guess that's good for new players, for those trying to get into the game. Now here is one of the two big things, the slam changes. They are nerfing slams, and a lot of people are upset about this. A lot of people are upset about this. Now, before I say anything about it, we need to say what the nerfs are. The slam radius is now going to be tied to how high you were up in the air when you slammed. So if you're very high up, you'll have a very big slam radius. If you are, you know, jumping 1 millimeter like a lot of players do and slamming and just spamming over and over, you're going to have a very small slam radius. Now, how Pablo described it, it is completely subject to change, but he said maybe if you're like really high up, you might be able to get an even bigger slam radius than we have currently. So as far as just pure radius goes, it could technically be a buff. But overall, a nerf, since most people just, you know, do the little tiny 1 millimeter bunny hop and slam over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Now, it's also going to be changing the Nira mods, the Nira mod sets. Now, how they currently work in game is if you have one of them, you get a 100% slam damage increase. And if you have two of them in the set, you get a 200% slam damage increase. This is currently broken, and it gives both a melee damage increase, the same multiplier you get from condition overload or primed... Crap, I can't remember pressure point, or like prime pressure point or normal pressure point, on top of giving a slam damage multiplier, which is a separate and final multiplier. So it's giving far more damage than it should, which is a bit of yowza. Doesn't really matter that it's getting nerfed, I don't think, because you can already get so much damage on slams, so I don't think this is going to make much of a difference. They are, because they're fixing it, they're going to slightly adjust it so it gives 150% slam damage instead of 100% slam damage and 100% melee damage, and then, you know, 300 if you have both of the mods. In practice, this is not going to change much, and if you have way too much damage percent from like condition overload or something, it can actually situationally be a buff. But overall, it's going to make such a small difference that you don't even really need to pay attention to it. But the main one is the slam radius. And, oh buddy, I am a fan of the nerf. I think it's completely valid. DE has, for a very long time, said that they don't like it when you can have something that's completely broken while putting in extremely minimal effort in both regards to builds and gameplay. They do not like that. That's why they nerfed Dante so hard back when he first came out. And despite all the what is it, backlash, they did not revert all of the changes to Dante. They did buff him back a bit, but he's still worse than he was on release, and they never caved to that. And I don't think they will cave with this either, because slam builds, they're really broken. They just are. You don't need much to make them work. I showed a really busted build, and by busted I mean the damage was busted with the Archititron like a month or two ago or something like that, and I had like 4 mods, and I was one-shotting with no combo, one-shotting level 200 Steel Path Corrupted Heavy Gunners. That should not be happening, okay? Not when you can just do a little bunny hop and slam over and over and over and over and over and over. And really, it's not an interesting gameplay loop either. It's the same 1.5 seconds of rotation for what you're doing for your damage on repeat. Now, imagine doing that in a 3-hour survival mission. I know some people enjoy it, but overall, it's just not an interesting way of killing stuff and doing damage. And these changes aren't really going to be that big of a nerf. It reduces the slam radius, yes, but melee influence is still going to be something you can use, which gives more radius. Yeah, less radius for the slam itself means less multiplicative scaling, but it's still going to be really, really intense. Or sorry, not multiplicative, quadratic. It's still going to be very, very strong. Just jump a little higher. It's not that big of a deal. The damage itself is not going down. It's just the radius. This will likely not really matter that too much. I think that slams are still going to be meta as hell, just ridiculously strong. They're still probably going to be like if not the best ways of killing enemies. So honestly, all of the people complaining about it's really, if you don't think that it is a little too crazy, then you're just extremely biased towards it because you like it so much. You know what? You're allowed to like it, but it also, you have to accept the fact that they don't want that kind of thing to be in the game, or at least not to the level that it is. Now, the other thing that a lot of people are upset about, the Valkyr rework. I have not watched anybody else's videos talking about this, okay? The extent of what I've seen from Backlash would be like Discord, and I saw that Nova Umbral posted a video about the Valkyr rework. I meant to watch that before this, haven't gotten to it. And I also saw that Shiro Nature had a very passive-aggressive kind of post about the Valkyr rework, and I thought that was very funny. And I can sort of see where a lot of the negative feedback is coming from, but I don't think it's as bad as people are making out to be. So let's go to the dev workshop to talk about the Valkyr rework, where we get all the nitty-gritty. So first off, we have her passive. Previously, her passive, all it did was make it so that you recovered from being knocked down faster, and that was basically useless. There was no reason to have it. Now she has a unique passive called Rage. The Rage is a special meter, and after you kill enemies or hit enemies with melee weapons, Rage will build up over time. And it also works in Hysteria. Rage provides extra damage, which is very, very nice. It also says it provides some survivability. I don't remember they mentioned that. Maybe I just forgot it, but we'll get to that. Accumulates Rage, increasing her melee damage up to 300%. Pablo did mention, I believe, that this is additive, so it's not like insane, but it's still there. She consumes her, if this is not additive, correct me, but I could have sworn he said it was, but if it's not, correct me. She consumes her rage if above 75% to prevent death and become invulnerable briefly. So as long as you get back to 75 after you take lethal damage, you are basically invincible on her, but that depends on how many enemies you can hit and or kill with your melees consistently to keep yourself alive. Now you get Rage in melee, Rage on melee kill and melee hit, like I said before, gain up to 300% based on real-time, no snapshotting, rage amount. Kills grant a small amount of rage, and there's assist build rage. So like if Valkyr melees an enemy and somebody else takes it, you will still get some level of rage, so you don't have to worry about getting nothing because your teammates are killing everything. Finisher and mercy kills also count towards building up your rage as well. Melee hits grant the least amount of rage, but can be triggered multiple times per enemy. So if you have like crazy attack speed, I'm assuming that will be really effective for building up your rage. And rage stops decaying briefly whenever you gain rage. So if you aren't gaining rage regularly, it will start to decay. It slowly decays over time without rage generation. Consumes all rage if at or above 75% when dealt lethal damage to prevent death and give Valkyr 3 seconds of invulnerability. I think that this should be a higher number. I don't think it should consume all of it if you're at above 75%. It should consume only 75%. And I think the 3 seconds of invulnerability should be bumped up to maybe like 5 seconds, 5 or 6. I think that would be more fair. It does have no cooldown though, so there's that. And Valkyr has not lost her immunity to hard landings, because that was also part of her passive, and it's still there, so you don't have to worry about, like, you know, recoiling when you land from a high state. I honestly think they should just remove that from the game entirely, though. It's a very stupid mechanic. Valkyr's stats themselves have been buffed. Valkyr's base health went from 270 to 450. Her base armor went from 630 to 800. And for the prime version, it went from 270 to 450. And for the health, and the armor from 735 to 935. She has almost 1,000 base armor. Very, very juicy. Ripline. Oh, it's still here, my beloved. I love this ability, and I'm so glad they didn't just outright remove it. Thank you. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Meg, for being the one that made Valkyr originally. I love Valkyr's Ripline. Her Ripline no longer cancels until Valkyr reaches the end of the line, so it's much more effective for movement. Ripline's speed and ease of use have been updated with the goal of providing a smoother experience, so it's just going to feel much better all around. Now, on top of that, double jump usage is reset upon using Ripline. Also, extremely nice. Ripline can be cancelled by jumping during use. Also, very nice. Jumping during Ripline adds a small temporary momentum boost to the player's movement midair, so you can just really be fast as hell with it. And Valkyr will automatically use a melee attack when arriving at a target should you use it to go towards enemies. Okay. And there's a lot of ands. They're doing a lot to Ripline. Ripline's cast when it's on an enemy, okay? If she targets an enemy, it will pull Valkyr to the enemy and group enemies within a 7-meter radius around her to where she groups. It pulls them all in. So it is now a way better movement tool, and it is a grouping ability. Very, very nice buff. And the grouping scales with range. Incredible. So now range will actually be good on Valkyr, because as it is, you don't really need to build any range on Valkyr. The augments, Ripline is now free while airborne, and particle velocity is now increased with mod rank. So not much has changed here. Actually, wasn't that exactly what it was before? Or no, it was cast Ripline while you're airborne to get 4 free casts or something like that. Warcry is receiving minor adjustments, which makes sense because Warcry is already pretty solid as a buff. Now, Warcry can be recast, thank God. Warcry's base duration increased to 20 seconds from 15. Thank God. These are some nice buffs. Ability effects spread to allies within affinity range. Players can reacquire Warcry's effects when re-entering Valkyr's affinity range. If you die or get nullified, you can return to Valkyr to refresh Warcry. So you just have to walk back in her affinity radius and it'll automatically reapply it to you. She doesn't need to recast. This is amazing for her support capabilities. Not that she's meant to be a support, but very nice for your teammates. Warcry no longer slows enemies. It's been moved to paralysis. The slow didn't really do much anyways. Warcry has received a new casting animation and updated visual effects, and it can now be cast while moving. Lots of very, very nice buffs to have. Do they mention it later with the Hysteria, the Warcry buff in combination with it? I think so. Somewhere down here. Well, they mention that Warcry's armor bonus you get while you are in Hysteria is tripled. So it goes from 50% bonus armor to 150% bonus armor. I don't know if the melee damage is also tripled though. Paralysis. Paralysis now brings additional functionality to double down on the ability to weaken your foes while reconfiguring it from costing shields to energy. Finally not costing shields anymore. Very nice. Enemies struck by paralysis receive a 50% melee damage vulnerability. That is a very strong vulnerability. Melee damage vulnerability scales with strength. Enemies and enemy health bars will receive visual effects to indicate their vulnerability when the player actively uses any melee weapon. Enemies struck by paralysis are slowed by a base 30%. This also scales with strength, so you can massively slow them and make them take a ton of damage from melee weapons. Shield cost has been removed, casting paralysis now costs 50 energy. Since there's no shield cost anymore, a base 400 impact damage was added to compensate. Paralysis has been updated with an upper body animation to ensure movement isn't interrupted when casting. Paralysis visual effects have updated to appear radial rather than conal. whereas before it wasn't like that. And previous line of sight check has been updated to our modern version to improve hit detection reliability. Because if you didn't know, like last year I think it was, they updated how line of sight checks work in the game to be more consistent. The augments, enemies will now be ragdolled to group them up with the augments. Interesting. The duration feel will be the same, but ultimately fix a long-standing issue with the previous iteration with knockdowns, where enemies would not be pulled while afflicted with status effect animations. Interesting. So it's just more grouping, I guess, with the augment. We'll have to see how that feels in game. Hysteria. This is her bread and butter. It is really what makes Valkyr Valkyr. So, and it's also where a lot of the upset has come from, because you're no longer invulnerable while you are in Valkyr's fourth ability. Now, I understand why a lot of people are upset about this. It makes sense. But it also fits better with our theme of building a ton of armor. Why do you have crazy base armor and a huge armor multiplier from Warcry and health healing, lifesteal on her claws if you're just straight up invincible to damage, invulnerable to damage? So it makes sense. But the main problem with this stems from not Valkyr itself, but rather the game itself and how enemy damage scales, because you really can't health tank most of the time past like level 1000. You're gonna die, and that's not a Valkyr issue. That's a enemy damage scaling issue. Yes, here we go. Armor gained from Warcry is increased to 3 times during Hysteria for Valkyr. Currently, Valkyr is one of the highest armor stats with room to acquire much more, but that armor became meaningless with Hysteria's invulnerability. Like I just said, yada yada yada. Valkyr is immune to status effects while Hysteria is active. I believe that was already a thing, but you're still immune to status. Very nice. Energy drain caps at 10 energy per second instead of 15, so it's not as expensive to use. Healing from Hysteria's lifesteal is now 50 health per hit, and the health is scaled with strength, so you can get a lot of health back very, very quickly. The self-reflection damage part of Hysteria has been completely removed. I honestly never even had that take effect while playing her. I didn't even know how that shit worked because it never did anything for me. Valkyr's Talons / Hysteria melee stance has received various adjustments to accommodate improved mobility, damage, and force status effects on her attacks during Hysteria. So now compared to before, she has higher multipliers for more damage, and she has forced slash procs on several of the hits. It also moves forward more rather than standing still while during her combos. So you have a lot more movement while attacking, as well as damage and status procs. So that's very nice to have. Several damage multipliers in her combos increased up to 300%. Hysteria's attacks received a base attack range increase from 1.7 meters to 2.15. That's not really going to make much of a difference, but it's there, I guess, almost half a meter. Hysteria IPS is now only 75% slash and 25% puncture. Impact damage and weighting have been removed entirely. That is also very, very nice. Much better. Impact felt less useful in Hysteria's damage distribution, as our goal was to emphasize the essence of Valkyr's destructive capabilities. Now, the augments, Enraged, the damage and crit chance are increased from 350% to 200%. Very curious to try that out. Yeah, so a lot of people are really mad you're losing the invulnerability and now you have to health tank on her. If they changed enemy damage scaling, which really, really hope they do, they kind of, it's becoming even more of an issue as time goes on and they add in more difficult content. People start to realize that health tanking is not really viable. It's a big issue. But outside of very niche kinds of game modes, I do think you'll still be able to get enough health and armor that it's fine. And you can shield gate with her now more effectively, and you don't have to consume it with paralysis, but I personally wouldn't even build shield gating after all these changes. Overall, I'm kind of in the middle. I can see the downsides, but I also see all of the potential upsides. I think all of the changes to her first ability are just all good. Like all of those changes. Her rage meter, very interesting. The melee damage is kind of pointless, to be totally honest. I don't really care about the melee damage part. completely unnecessary. She does more than enough damage as is. That's just going to be there for like people on the lower end, I guess. Mostly there to keep you from dying with the don't die part. So there's that. Another complaint I've seen is about not being able to kill enemies to build your rage up to keep you from dying. But you do get some level of rage even if you get an assist. So as long as you can at least touch enemies with your melee, you'll still get some level of rage. And let's be completely honest here. If you're in a mission and your teammate is killing everything before you can even touch it to build up your rage, I don't think dying or killing the enemies is an issue at that point. It's annoying, yes. I personally hate it when that happens. But you don't really need to worry about dying if everything's already dead because your teammate killed them all. So I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's just a little bit of a disingenuous sort of argument because you're ignoring the context that goes along with it. And all of the other things are just there, I suppose. Paralysis. I do think paralysis is a rather boring change. Like, she already has plenty of damage, and you just gave her even more damage on her hysteria and even more damage from her passive, and so you're making her paralysis just more damage. Completely pointless, I think. Paralysis, they should replace it with something more interesting. I know that I'm definitely going to subsume off paralysis still, because why would I need that extra damage when I could put something more interesting on it? Very weird change, I guess. Not really sure why they did that. The Warcry buffs are very nice. I have no complaints with that either, right? So very happy with the first and the second ability changes. Not so much paralysis, and give it time with hysteria. We'll see how that goes. So, you know, have a good level of skepticism, but don't lose your bonkers about it, right? Like, I'm sure a lot of the other Valkyr mains don't think this is the end of the world. I mained Valkyr for a very long time. She's one of my 3 favorite frames. I got like 5 Umbral Form on her. I've used Valkyr a lot, okay? And I'd say as a Valkyr, I say not main anymore because now I play Hildren constantly, but as a previous Valkyr main, most of these seem like upsides to me, and I don't have too big of an issue. But we'll have to give it time to see. Now, other than that, we're also getting the heirloom skins, of course. You know, we got this very nice heirloom skin for Valkyr coming along after her reworks, I think, or around the same time. Comes out in July. Very heavy focus on her chest. I'm not the one that said it. Literally, Rebecca said it in the Devstream that it's the most chest-focused frame or skin they've ever had. So that's something, and some very incredible thighs going on. Between this and Oraxia, both being very sexy, very interesting. I like it. I did see someone in a comment on Tactical Potatoes video going over this that they were not a fan of how a lot of the frames nowadays are more sexualized. Like, you know, very, very kinky looking stuff with the Ember heirloom skin, and now this heirloom skin, and just in general with Saren or Nyx, some kind of their personalities as well. A lot of interesting choices in that regard. I have no problem with it. I even like it, you know, certified gooner out here. A lot of people throw around the gooner term. I think that is such a dead term. People have kicked that horse beyond death, okay? Everything's a freaking gooner thing nowadays. People are like, oh no, it showed like 5% of their skin. This is for gooners. Like, bro, no. If you're gonna say something's for gooners, at least have it be on par with the first Descendant, bare minimum, all right? People get a little too upset about that. No problem with this. I don't think it's an issue that they have some sexy stuff. There's 1,000 skins and stuff that are not kinky. So if you have a problem with this, just don't mess with it. Very simple. Vauban will be getting the next heirloom after Valkyr. Oh, buddy, look at those muscles. Oh yes. See, I like this, but I also don't. I'm not a fan of his feet. I think they're a little weird, and his helmet's a little off, though it might look better in game. But my biggest issue is that you have 2 really cool things conflicting with each other. Bro's jacked as hell, and he has an awesome jacket, okay? But the jacket looks a little too big on him, and then it hides that he's got all this glorious metal muscle All right. I really hope the jacket is something you can take off. That would be so cool. Please, DE, set that as something you can take off. So then you can just have him look like this. Oh my god, that would be very glorious. Okay, at least, you know, if we're allowed to bust a fat one to Valkyr, let me bust one to Vauban's muscles too. It's only fair. And that's mostly it. We're getting, you know, other stuff here and there. Devuri is getting a permanent node. We're getting a new Murmur enemy. Plays your own Warframe and Devuri like regularly, I guess. New clan events. Thrax in your dorm zone offering rewards for fending off the indifference. And evolving Signa, getting an Incarnon Heavy Scythe. Already went over Oraxia. Citrine Deluxe is coming out as well. Valkyr rework, already talked that. New Nightwave, yada yada yada. Rest of the stuff doesn't really matter. The main things are Oraxia coming out, Slam changes, Valkyr changes, yada yada yada. That's it, I guess. We went over all the important stuff. I gave my thoughts. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. Big woe. I guess that's it. Adios.